So there's this lovely thing that happens when you actually get a regular cadence with these meetups, is you're sat there one day going, I should organize a meetup. And you get an email from Jacob going, hey, do you want to do another meetup at Zulka? How about April? And then you get an email from Aaron going, hey, can I do a talk? And then you get a message from Mo on LinkedIn going, hey, I got this talk I'd love to do. And you're like, the pieces just line themselves up. It's lovely when that happens. So yes, thank you all for coming along, everybody. We have two speakers for you this evening. Coming up after the break is going to be Erin Hämäläinen. But first up, please give a big warm welcome, speaking at London.net for the first time, Mo Pazooki.
Hello. Hello, London.net user group. Welcome and thanks for coming along for today's session, where I'm going to talk about JWT Authentication and Authorization. I'm Mo, Senior Software Engineer at GraphNet Health. In my free time, I usually talk about Microsoft technologies and create YouTube videos. So you can find me by just searching my name or just scanning this QR code. Let's get connected and share our knowledge. Without further ado, let's get started. Today, first, we are going to talk about history of security. It's always messy, to be honest. We are going to take a look at that bit, and then we are going to talk about the authentication and authorization process. Then we are going to talk about simplicity of username and password form and how it evolved into modern, which is using JWT in authentication and authorization process. And then we take a deeper look into the JWT, how it works. After that, we are going to talk about the refresh token, what its role, and then we see how we can implement JWT in our ASP.NET application, which is really a love story, isn't it? And finally, we were just talking about the pros and cons of the using JWT, and yeah, that's the end of our talk. So first stop, the messy reality of security and authentication and authorization. Honestly, being dirty and messy is intrinsically part of the security, because security, when we are talking about the security of your application, intrinsically it's quite complicated, and it has loads of test cases which you must always consider. Apart from that one, there are loads of security risks you must consider in your application, and you must always keep your libraries updated in your security framework. And there's a term in software engineering, we say YAGNI, you ain't gonna need it. But when it comes to the security, you always gonna need it, because it's the most important bit of your application. You always start with the clean code. Everything is clear at first. But slowly, as your application grows, you say, okay, I need this bit of consideration for security. And slowly, edge cases piles up, and you see yourself with loads of added bits of codes, which make your security bit always dirty and messy. But why is it like that? The reason is a vital role of security in your application. Consider that you have a microservice, and there is a bug in one of your microservices. And even if you publish that bug to the production environment, only that bit of microservice will go down, or there is a bug in one of those microservices, not your entire application. But if there is a bug or security issue in your security systems, then it's like a gateway and like a key to your whole application. So you have compromised your whole systems to that issue. That's why we are always concerned about the security. Apart from that one, it has a user experience impact. It means that, consider that you have loads of microservices and user is and switching between all those microservices. You really don't want each time ask username to enter its password or username. So you need to implement some single sign-on way to just ask user to enter username or password for the first time. So it's really vital, important bit of your application. The first bit we are going to talk about is authentication and authorization. Authentication, which is the first part of your security, is a process of verifying user's identity. First, you need to make sure the user is exactly the one who actually claimed to be. So this process, when you verify the user, is authentication. And after that, you have authorization. It actually defines that if the authenticated user has access to this resource or can perform these kind of actions or no. So this combination of authentication and authorization are actually the most important bit that secure your applications and ensures that user data are protected from unauthorized access. And there are common challenges in security, no matter how you have implemented, but there are common challenges. One of them is password fatigue. And it means that we all know that for each website, we need to save our username and password somewhere. If you're not using some tools like 1Password or something like that, it means that we're always use the same username and password for all those websites. And that's why we always have password fatigue issue. Along phishing attacks and social engineering, which means somehow the attacker managed to find the username and password, and just by entering username and password, the attacker claims to be me and can have access to our application, which is not good. And we need to think about all these challenges. Old but gold. The simplicity of username and password. This form, as you can see here, we are all familiar with this form. It's a long-standing authentication method that you can see everywhere in all applications. And we are all familiar with this form. We trust this form, and it has been well implemented in different platforms and applications. And all of our users, as soon as they see this form, they know what is expected. But using this form comes with some limitations and, of course, advantages. One of the advantages, as I've mentioned, is that ease of implementation, because it's a long-standing security bit. It has been well implemented in all platforms, and all of our users already are familiar with these forms. So it's quite easy to implement in our application. But there are some security vulnerabilities and reliability concerns, as I have mentioned earlier. Because usually users are not going to use some tools like 1Password or something to manage and store their passwords. They simply use the same username and password for all their websites. And sometimes it's quite easy to predict what's the username and password. And apart from that one, it means that somehow if I lost my password, by just having the username and password, you can log into my websites, which is not really good. But in modern way of authentication and authorization, apart from the simple form we had before, we have these new sorry, pen is not working. Anyway, but we have these new login methods. These new login methods, actually, by using these new login methods, we don't need to have username and password for each website. we simply click on our preferred login method, which is, for instance, LinkedIn, Microsoft, whatever. So we don't have password fatigue in this case. And as a developer, I trust all these identity providers. So if they say this user is genuine, it means that I can trust that the logged in user is genuinely who it claimed to be, rather than just using simple password. So we have to implement this new mechanism for our login. But how we can really implement this within our application? What is behind the scene of this authentication and authorization process? It is JWT, which I'm going to talk about it today. First step is to have a better understanding of JWT. What is JWT? JWT is a compact token, JSON format token, which is self-contained data. By self-contained data, I mean that this token have all the information we need for authentication and authorization part. So this token actually simplifies secure communication between our microservices or API calls. And compared to traditional methods, the advantage of these JWT is its stateless authentication. As I said, this token is self-contained data. So it has all the information we need for authentication and authorization. This is quite helpful when you're going to implement scalability in your application, because you don't need to worry about the server-side session storage and management, because this token has everything you need. You can simply scale your application and you just receive the JWT token in each request. And it's quite efficient and better than the previous username and password. And it's quite useful when you're implementing a single page application or mobile application. And it improves the user experience, because in the single page application, for instance, it's quite possible we switch between different microservices. And we definitely don't want ask user to enter the password whenever the user switch between microservices. So by using this JWT token, we can actually improve the user experience. The next step is take a look at the JWT structure. The JWT consists of three main bits: header, payload, and signature. All these parts are encoded and encrypted and are separated by dots. If we take a look at the JWT.io website, you can see a sample JWT token here. As you can see, we have three parts. The green one, or the header bit, is talking about its encryption that we have used. And in the payload, we have claims, which is the actual payload is the most important bit of the JWT. And in the secret, we just have secret key for signing, secret key that has been used for signing this JWT token. About the claims, we can have actually two types of authorization: role-based authorization or policy-based authorization. In this workflow, as you can see, for instance, a client sends a request to the server. And the server, as you can see, pen is working again, that's great. So the client sends a request to the server. In the header of the request, we have JWT, and JWT, as we said, consists of these three bits. So our server process the JWT token. If it is valid and it's authenticated. Now, in the authorization step, we go to the next step, which is in the authentication step, we go to the next step, which is authorization. If the request fails in the first step, we just throw 401 or unauthorized error. But if everything goes fine, it goes to the next step to see if these users have enough access to the requested resource or no. If it is not, then we are throwing 403 or forbidden exception. Otherwise, it's fine to have that user to have access to the endpoint. But here is a missing bit. What is the purpose of the refresh token? The purpose of refresh token in all the JWT process is just improve user experience and improve the security. Let me explain a little bit in this flow. This is the flow of the one of our applications. For instance, consider that you have a web application. For the first time, the user asks for the user enter username and password, and our Auth API generate a JWT token for the user. Consider that right now we don't have the refresh token, just JWT token. So we get that JWT and send that JWT in the request to the application API. Everything works fine. But here is a thing we need to always consider. JWT lifespan is always short. It is between 5 to maximum 20 minutes, not more than that. So what would happen after 5 or 20 minutes? Because we can't actually have a long lifespan for the JWT. It's possible somehow attackers, by sniffing techniques or something like that, they manage to have access to the JWT. So we need to always have a short lifespan for that one. So after expiring JWT, it means that user have to again see the login page and ask for and enter their username and password again, which is not really good. To resolve this issue, for the first time when the user enter the username and password, our authentication API, it must return JWT along with refresh token. And the user, application, save the refresh token in its local database. And when the JWT is expired, before sending the request to the API, first we are going to send the JWT, expired JWT, and refresh token to our authentication API. And then here, we are going to get a refresh token in our database. We are going to find it, and if it's valid and everything is fine, our authentication server, it's going to return again JWT and refresh token to the users. So users can use the new JWT token for sending requests to our application API. So there is no need to enter username and password each time. And the thing is, this refresh token, lifespan of this refresh token is quite long. It could be weeks, even years. And that's fine. It's based on your policy. But in case, for instance, somehow you say, for instance, attacker managed to have access to this refresh token. For instance, the attackers stole the client's mobile phone or something like that. Then we need to think about revoking and deleting this refresh token from our database. And those are just things we need to consider in our security. Now we are going to take a look at how we can implement JWT in ASP.NET, which is really love story. See, to implement JWT in ASP.NET project, the only thing you need to have good understanding is having a good understanding of authentication scheme. That's the only thing you need to be worried about. Authentication scheme has two responsibilities. First responsibility is to define the handlers. First responsibility is to define the handlers, and the second responsibility is to define the configuration for that handlers. Suppose you have many identity servers. So this is the responsibility of this scheme to say this request which I received is from which identity providers. And based on that identity providers in the authentication scheme, I'm going to verify the token. And if everything is fine, there is no issue, then of course I'm going to pass the request. This is the scenario you all have in your applications. Suppose that our client see a login page. Our client see the login page. The user has ability to select to enter the password itself or use Azure Active Directory to log into the applications or use the API key you have defined. So user can select either of all these identity providers. When we receive the request, when our application receives the request, the first bit is authentication scheme, as I said. This authentication scheme defines the request which authentication provider should be selected. And if everything is working fine and there is no issue, then it's going to authorize the request, and finally request can reach to its destination. To achieve this, we just need to call this add authentication method. And here you can define whatever name you like, but I have used the default JWT default namings, which is just a bearer here. If you look into the authentication scheme, you can see it's a constant string and bearer, and that's it. I've used the default JWT bearer name here, and I have called in the first place add policy scheme. In the add policy scheme, here, if you look at the code, you can see I'm going to read the headers. I'm going to read the authorization from the headers of each request. Then I'm going to remove the bearers to have have access to the tokens. And then if everything is fine, maybe the token is valid, then I'm going to read the issuer of the token. And here in this scenario, which I said in the previous slide, I have two providers. One of them is my local JWT scheme, which I'm going to talk about in the next slide. And then I have Azure Active Directory scheme, which means that this token needs to be verified with the Azure authentication providers. And after that, I have just a custom token, which is actually API key we have provided. It's a simple one. Now, after that, I just need to define my identity providers. For instance, when it is our identity provider is actually Azure Active Directory, I'm going to check the issuer and audience. I just want to make sure this token is valid from the issuer and audience or no. And then I'm going to read the issuer and audience and secret key from the app setting files. When you prepare actually your authentication providers in Azure Active Directory, or it really doesn't matter, is it Keycloak or whatever it is, they're going to give you all these information: issuer, audience, and the secret key. Of course, there are more options if you like to add, but these are essential. I'm going to read all those configuration from the app setting files. And then in this case, however, it's optional, but I'm not going to tolerate any a delay between when the token is expired. I'm not going to tolerate any times expiration delay for that time. That's why I have set the key skew to time span 0. So it means that as soon as the token is invalid, I'm going to expire it. And in the next step, I'm going to implement my own identity provider, which is responsible for generating tokens for the verified users. The same configuration applies here. I'm going just to validate issuer and audience and read the authentications from the app setting files. And in the last bit, I'm just adding a simple API authentication. We just check the headers to see if you have this API code in your header or no. That's quite simple bit. In this configuration, as you can see, suppose that a user has entered its username and password. And first, I have checked in the database to see if the user has entered correct username and password or no. If everything is fine, and when it comes to generating token, here, after validating the users, I'm going to, the first step is to add some claims. These are public claims that we always add to our JWT tokens. For instance, SUB, which is an abbreviation for subject, we usually enter the username because it's unique. And after that, based on your application, you might need to have your private tokens. These tokens could be a lot, and that's something you need to be a little bit worried about. You can't really store anything you like in your JWT token because this token is supposed to be small. But suppose you have role-based access control or policy-based access control. Based on that one, you're going to assign all these claims, private claims, to that JWT token. After that, the only remaining bit is simply just read the secret key to sign the token, and don't forget, just add the expiration date for your token, and that's it. You just return the JWT token. So when I was talking about the role-based vs policy-based access control, I was talking about something like this. Consider that you have an API. This API, for instance, consider that I don't have this bit yet. Right now, I'm going to talk about the role-based access control. Consider that you have an API and you want just administrator have access to this API. So when user log in, when you create a JWT token, the only thing you need to add to the claims is the role of these users. So that JWT token must have admins in their private claims. And when it comes here to authorization step, you check the tokens, private tokens, to see if the role admin is there or not. If it is there, then that's fine. But if it's not, of course, you're going to throw unauthorized error or forbidden. However, this approach is quite simple, but it means it comes with some limitations because you must have a very good understanding of all possible roles you're going to have in your project. But in case your project is quite dynamic, for instance, you might say time to time I'm going to revoke or add some roles, actions. When it's quite dynamic, then it's better if we go with the policy access control. In the policy access control, you're going to assign the policies like can read or can read, can delete, or whatever it is to the policies. And then you're assigning these policies to the roles. There is a many-to-many relationship between roles and policies. And each user, of course, can have many roles. So here in the API, instead of limiting that one to the admin users, you're going to write the policy name. So for instance, you're going to say this API, the user just can read this API. And it means that when in the authorization process, you're going to take a look at these can read policy in the claims. You can simply change these policies to between the different roles. You can delete it, add it. It's quite easy. So it's a better implementation. However, it means that it's a little bit more complex than simple role and password. So yeah, it's up to you to take a look into it, which one is better work for you. And your controller would look like something like this. The first step, as you can see, is of course simplified version of the authentication. You just need to generate a token here. As you can see, if suppose that the user is valid. In here, we just generate a token, and here, if the token is valid and the user have enough permission, then he can see, hello, this is protected resource. And this bit will do all the authorization process for you. And if the users use that previous controllers, the user will see something like this. This is a valid JWT token. If you look at the header bit, you can see the encryption algorithm that has been used. Here you can see the username. Here the username is a string. But yeah, here you can see the username, the permission that has been assigned to this user. It's read and write in this case. And you can see the issuer here. And of course, you can add loads of information based on your needs to this token. But you must always be worried about the size of this token. This token is supposed to be small. And that's bring us almost to the end of our session. I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of using JWT. Advantage of JWT, as I said, it's about if you need to really have a scalable application or not. Because when you're using JWT, you don't need to be worried about server-side session management. This JWT token has everything you need. But it means that there are some challenges when it comes to token management. You should have a very, as I said, short lifespan for your token. And if you actually don't obey these rules and you don't, for instance, you don't want to implement refresh token, it means that you're exposing your user to some security concerns and issues. And yeah, that's everything I wanted to say about the JWT. It's a powerful authentication tool, and it enhances your security because users don't need to enter username and password in each form. So it's a better way of implementing security in your application, and it improves user experience because users don't need to enter username and password each time when the user switch between different microservices. So it's a better way of implementing security in your applications. If you like the source code of this project, you can just scan this code. You will see my GitHub website, and yeah, that's it. I'd be more than happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mo. All right, folks, we do have time for questions. If you have a question, raise your hand. I will run over to you with this tiny little microphone, because if the people on YouTube can't hear the questions, they get very cranky. And you know what the people on YouTube are like. Do we have any questions? Yes.
Thank you for an engaging talk. It's good information, and I appreciate it. I did have one question. So I'm writing, I'm writing a mobile application. I'm using the JWT framework for letting various identity providers tell me that my users really are who they are. What do I need to tell my users about the privacy situation? Because obviously I've got a data management and privacy concern now that those identity providers are learning something about those users, at least those users' use of my application. So what kind of privacy disclosures and data management disclosures are now appropriate for me?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The thing is, actually, let me show you the relative slides if I can quickly switch between the slides. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm going to show it right now. Sorry, bear with me to find, yeah, there we go. Yep, there we go. So if you have, for instance, implemented this authentication, something like this, if the user actually select the simple username and password, it means that all the security or all the privacy concerns you said, it's all by you. I mean, you must be responsible for all the security and privacy concerns. Usually users are not very concerned about just entering username and password or just sharing their emails. However, if they are, you need to somewhere in your application add a privacy link somewhere in your application and make it clear to the users that, for instance, we might use your emails for marketing or I don't know, whatever you like. But yeah, you must warn the users. But if you give users other way of authentication, for instance, if I use the Microsoft authentication, it means that my application or your application, it doesn't have access to anything other than just, is this authenticated user or not? Your application talk with the Microsoft identity providers just to say, is this a valid request or no? And Microsoft identity provider would say, yes, it is. So you don't have any permission to have more access and have more knowledge about, for instance, user phone or whatever. It just validate that JWT token. So yeah, these are all the things you need to consider. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions, folks? Yes.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for the talk.
Thank you.
It's very interesting. I have a question regarding the request token. You mentioned that it can be stored in a local database. Where is this database? Is it on client side or on server side?
Actually, let me show you the related slide. So let me quickly find the slides where I talked about the, there we go. Let me share the slides. So as you can see here, for the first time when the user, this is your application, and for the first time when the user enter the username and password, your authentication providers just return the JWT and refresh token. And you have to save it locally on your application somewhere. For instance, if it's mobile application, then you need to store it somewhere in your application. And in your future requests, you just need to send that JWT tokens. But of course, as I said, if you think somehow this process might compromise the users, because when you're talking application, it means that the device on your phone. I mean, in case, for instance, you lost your phone or someone just took your phone, then you must think about the solution in your authentication service to revoke all these refresh tokens. It means that when you revoke all those refresh tokens and invalidate the JWT tokens, next time the user just send a request because it's invalid, then the user will see the login form to enter the username and password again. But you need to store it somewhere based on your application. You need to store it locally somewhere in your client side.
So it's start client side, yes?
Yes, it is. I mean, it depends. It could be a client side, yeah.
Okay. So doesn't it present some security issues? If you said like refresh token can be stored like for years?
Yeah, those are all the things you need to be considered. Yeah, it could be. I mean, you need to store it somewhere completely safe as much as you can. Yeah, but yeah, you need to really store it somewhere safe. Yep.
And what are the options? How can we store it safely on the client side?
Yep. The thing is, your application, when you actually you generated this authentication service, JWT file. Each time you send a request here, and let me show you. Or anyway, each time you send this request here. Each time I receive the request here, you are sending the JWT token with your request. So I'm going to, your server here, your application, it's going to validate that JWT token with the identity providers. It's not very concerning because, as I said, it's somehow possible attackers sniff and have access to these JWT tokens. So that's why I said the lifespan of these JWT should be small, for instance, 5 minutes. So usually it's quite safe to store it somewhere just for 5 minutes because each time I'm going to talk with the identity, your application must actually talk with the identity server to say, is this request valid or not? It's up to your application. If it's quite security sensitive, so probably it's forced to have a lifespan for JWT for probably 2 or, it depends on your application, 1 minute even. And each time, of course, in the background, your application needs to get a new JWT whenever it sends a request to the applications. And yeah, this stuff will do all the tricks. But yeah, the only bit I can advise is just consider low time span for your JWT token. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Fantastic. Thank you, Mo.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. And yeah.